I've made it no secret around here that the Legend of Zelda series stands as my favorite franchise in all of gaming, with Breath of the Wild standing as my favorite game of all time. Today, I don't really want to talk about my love of the series, however. Instead, I want to focus on where I feel the Zelda series is going to be heading moving forward. First, we must understand something about the Zelda series. It's been largely unpredictable. Not just in terms of art styles, but direction. You never knew when the next defining Zelda game would release, which always led to an air of mystery around every game. Was Zelda 2 the new mindset for future games? What about Ocarina of Time? Is Triforce Heroes a sign of changing directive? Obviously, we know there are a select group of Zelda games that have set up the formula and blueprint for future titles. The first, of course, being The Legend of Zelda on NES. But honestly, that formula really never felt set in stone thanks to Zelda 2 until A Link to the Past came along. After that, many argue Ocarina of Time set the new precedent moving forward. The problem with that process, though, is that if you look at the actual structure of Ocarina of Time, you can draw many correlations to what A Link to the Past did, even down to the 7-year change to adulthood, where the world itself draws striking similarities to the light and dark world in the SNES Classic. What Ocarina of Time did do, however, was less about changing the standards of what a Zelda game is, and more about taking what it is and making it work in a three-dimensional space. Everything about the series really stayed mostly the same after that until Breath of the Wild. Sure, the Wind Waker went with sailing and islands, Four Swords Adventures, and Triforce Heroes all did various types of multiplayer goodness. Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks implemented touch controls, while Skyward Sword did the same, but with motion. Ocarina of Time's one major contributing aspect compared to A Link to the Past is that the game was a bit more structured, making all the other entries more structured as well. To the layman, this meant that Zelda went from being the definition of open-world games in Zelda 1 and A Link to the Past to a much more linear path, which ended up peaking in Skyward Sword. Nintendo reversed this trend with A Link Between Worlds, but was it really a new direction for the series? After all, it was literally a game built in the world of A Link to the Past. It was less of something new for the series, more of a reminder where the series once was. Then, Breath of the Wild happened. Now, look, Breath of the Wild being open world was again not new to the series, even if the level of how open world it is was new to the console 3D Zelda games of the world. But it was more than that. Gone were traditional dungeons, a mainstay of every Zelda game that has ever existed before it, save spin-off titles like Link's Crossbow Training. Link could now manually jump without the need of an item, like in Link's Awakening. Link could climb literally anything, offering even more freedom in the verticality of the game that other series that popularized this sort of concept, like Assassin's Creed, couldn't quite match. It added in breakable items, not a new concept for the series, but one that was never applied across the board. It added a full weather system to complement the day and night systems, a complete physics engine rather than predetermined animations. Storytelling, done in a manner mostly through your own devices, exploring the world, reading little notes and diaries, and obviously through flashback sequences, unlike anything done in the series before. Breath of the Wild is different from all other Zelda games for so many more ways than just this that I could literally go on and on about it for hours. But I think you get the point. Breath of the Wild is simply new. It's fresh. It's different. It's the future. So what does this mean for the future of Zelda games? Eiji Aonuma has already publicly stated that all future Zelda games are going to be open world. Okay, so linear Zelda games may be a relic of the past now, but what about other aspects of the series? Are traditional dungeons really done just because Breath of the Wild didn't have them? This is a less sure point because this is a reality that was never possible before this game. Will items always be breakable? Storytelling always through flashbacks? No hints have been dropped on the future of the series beyond it being open world based, and yes, that they are currently making a new Zelda game. So where do I think the series is going to go? I do think there is still a three-pronged possibly 4, approach to the series moving forward. First, let's talk about the remakes and remasters. Yes, they are going to continue. Whether it's porting over existing ones, like Twilight Princess and the Wind Waker HD, or creating a new one in Skyward Sword HD. They are going to keep happening, at least until Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are eventually remade into HD masterpieces. They sell too well not to do them, and with Breath of the Wild adding millions of new fans to the series, it's a great time to get them into the older games with a fresh coat of paint. The next prong is probably the most precarious of the bunch, spin-off titles. Believe it or not, there aren't really that many of them. Triforce Heroes may seem like the last major one, but that's actually part of the core series, just a different type of game. Rather, the last spin-off was actually Hyrule Warriors, or as we know it on Switch, Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. To date, it still stands as one of the most successful Musou games ever created. I certainly think a Hyrule Warriors 2 is not out of the question, and I do think other spin-off possibilities are out there. Remember Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle? Why not a Zelda plus Rabbids style game? The possibilities for these sorts of gaming crossovers are endless. I mean, Link is literally in Mario Kart now. So spin-offs will be a thing, even if infrequent in releases. The third prong is probably the one I am least sure about. Zelda has always existed in 2 forms, since Ocarina of Time brought the series into full 3D, going with the third-person perspective. Top-down Zelda games and third-person perspective ones have been the key. We haven't had a traditional top-down Zelda game since A Link Between Worlds in 2013, 5 years ago. That makes us almost overdue for a new one, especially based on the pace they used to appear, which was typically every 3 years. It's entirely possible Nintendo has decided to no longer go down this route in wake of Breath of the Wild's success. After all, they want to build upon that success rather than going backwards, having the next Zelda game try to top Breath of the Wild sales yet again. But the top-down Zelda games are always made with smaller teams, and as such require a smaller budget to make. Thus, the return on investment is usually really solid, and it is a way to please some traditionalists while still venturing off in new directions. I'm not honestly 100% sure these sort of games are going to continue to exist, at least on Switch. I think it's entirely possible such games, or some form of them, could end up moving to phones. Nintendo is planning to release 2 to 3 phone games per year, after all, and it's possible to make sense on such a platform, much to many Zelda fans' dismay. Still, whether it's on phones or the Switch, I get the suspicion we have not seen the last of the top-down Zelda games. It just might not be something we get again for another 5 years. I say that because the last time Nintendo gave a traditional style of games a break, aka side-scrolling Mario games, when they did bring it back in the new Super Mario series, they saw massive sales and success. If top-down Zelda sees a similar 10-year break, when it does return, it wouldn't be surprising if it became the best-selling top-down Zelda to date, simply because it will have been so long since one existed. So it may be a while until we see it, but I do believe it is going to exist eventually. The last prong is obviously the third-person perspective game. We know this is certainly coming. What we aren't sure about is what this game will actually be. Are we looking at the Majora's Mask to Breath of the Wild? Will it build upon what Breath of the Wild set up while bringing some series staples back, like large sprawling dungeons, potentially unlike anything we've seen before? Are the Sheikah Slate abilities coming back or being expanded upon? Or was that simply a game one-off, like so many other ideas like it in the past? Will we see an even larger world, potentially even more densely populated and lived in, where it's not already in a post-apocalyptic state? Will Zelda possibly fight alongside us, not only in the final fight, but throughout the adventure? Heck, what's next for Ganon? There was a bit of finality, at least to the feeling at the end of the fight in Breath of the Wild. But then again, we've been there before. We've seen him explode, be banished to the Sacred Realm, and even had him turned into literal stone. He's bound to be back eventually. But will it be immediately in the next game? Or will we see a new threat surface? Perhaps even an old one in Demise coming back to finish what Ganon or Ganondorf couldn't. There is so much unknown here. Whereas many of the other prongs are, in my honest opinion, a bit predictable, this one, the one we are most sure is happening, is the one we honestly have no clue where it's going to go. There hasn't been as big of a fundamental shift into what a Zelda game actually is, really, since The Legend of Zelda on NES. In many ways, that's why I think it's so intriguing what form this next game takes. Breath of the Wild effectively rebooted the series, without needing to erase the series past. The developers won't even confirm where in the timeline it goes, because they don't want it to be directly placed. Sure, it's definitely in the timeline, they have said as much, but with a 10,000-year gap, the largest in the history of the franchise, with callbacks to all three prongs of the timeline, and even some before the actual split, we're left with what, at least on the surface, looks like a game that has wiped the slate clean. Sure, all that stuff happened, but it was so long ago, it has no bearing on the future. Sort of like how we know caveman existed, but their bearing on things today is practically non-existent. I don't know where this franchise is heading. Will it be another bold table flip like Miyamoto is famous for doing? Will the series simply rest on its laurels and release a game that is very safe and familiar? Dare I say, a bit of a stagnation? Will the series do something daring and unpredictable again? Will it simply grow upon the new base and blossom even further? The possibilities are endless. All I know for certain is I am ready for it. Eiji Aonomo, Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto, and whatever gods or deities they do or do not believe in, I look to all of you now and say this: I want a new Zelda game, and I want it now. Okay, maybe that's selfish, maybe it's not fair. Heck, maybe it's not even reasonable. I don't care. I just know that I am ready. So bring it on. Again. Wait a second. Let's seriously just make that joke to a movie I'm not even sure most of my audience has ever seen? What's wrong with me? Anyways, folks, I am Nathaniel Rufflejans from Nintendo Prime. Be sure to enter our Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Bundle giveaway down in the description to the Gleam.io link. It is a 50,000 subscriber giveaway, so when we hit 50,000 subscribers, we will be announcing the winner. I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in, and let me know down below what you think the future of the Zelda series holds, whether it's remakes, whether it's top-down, whether it's third-party perspective, a sequel to Breath of the Wild, and what you want to be changed from Breath of the Wild, what you want to be the same. Are you missing the old days of Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess? Just let me know your general thoughts on the Zelda series and the future of it down in the comments, and I look forward to conversing with you guys on that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.